Very good. We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of Retech Center of École des Ponts Business School. My name is Saman. I'm the Vice Dean of the school. I'm the founding director of Retech Center. And today I have the pleasure of having our Dean, Professor Alon Rozen, Dean of École des Ponts Business School, my very good mentor, a figure that many of you who joined the session already had the pleasure of working with him and learning with him. And today, it's a very particular occasion in which I have the honor of having Alon on this session as the first official session that we are delivering together at Retech Center. For the context, this session is on exponential business model innovation 5.0, and that's exactly where Alon and I meet together. The encounter of our passion and the works that we have been doing for several years is now presented to you with pleasure. Alon, welcome to this session.
Hi, Saman. Thank you for the warm welcome. Yeah, I mean, this is actually quite a significant session for us. I'd say that the school has been moving in this direction of being more and more retech, so responsible technology oriented. This has been a long-term movement, something we really believe in, impact and the power of technology to do amazing things for us, but also the need to ensure that technology has a responsible side. And this is something we've been discussing with Saman for several years. His passion for the Industry 5.0, which I think he's taken further than most people in the definition of what Industry 5.0 means exactly. I think it goes much beyond industry, so we probably need a better name. And my own passion for business modeling and business model innovation. So this is a very kind of apt collaboration for us, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks so much, Saman.
Thank you, Alon. So this session is an introduction session as well to the specialization track of Exponential Business Model Innovation 5.0, or in short, we call it XBMI 5.0. That's Alon and I delivered together at Retech Center as specialized executive certification track courses, and also linked to our programs of executive MBA and executive DBA that we are delivering at school and at Retech Center. Very good. Alon, shall we get started? We see your slides. Is it full screen?
All right. Excellent. So basically, I guess there's no surprise in terms of what the session is about. We'll be talking about exponential business modeling or exponential business model innovation. And we'll try to kind of link some of the subjects Saman has been thinking about carefully, like the exponential futures, and some of the subjects I've been thinking about more carefully, which is the exponential business modeling. And so that's where we'll take us for the next 45 minutes. Let's move ahead. Just kind of kick a quick kickoff on what we're trying to achieve today. I'd say three different things. First, we want to try to help you understand the exponential context of what we're talking about here. It's not really evident to leap into the notion of exponential. It's not something our brains are wired for. And the idea of exponential futures as a context where digital capabilities and responsible innovation converge. And that convergence is redefining and reshaping how we create value today. So one key question that comes out of this is, how do we maximize both value and impact? And we'll talk about that later, but there used to be a real trade-off between the two, and most investors and business people and governments understood it as a trade-off. We're here to show you today that the two can be maximized and should be maximized together. A second kind of aspect that is, dear to our hearts is the whole notion of design, and especially when you take into account business modeling and business model innovation, and you understand that this is kind of the most potent, design lever that policymakers, business people, institutions have today. It's really the primary strategic tool that people have at their disposal to create value within this new exponential environment. And here, like the key question that comes out of that is, in this context, exponential futures, how do you reconfigure value and not just value in the abstract, but value systems so that the systems are generating value, it's a different kind of value, and it's a different kind of impact. And the third kind of piece of the puzzle is that hopefully what you'll come away with today is this 10x mindset. So 10x is kind of a number. In startup world, it's usually the idea is that if you don't do anything 10x better than the existing solutions, nobody will care enough to switch to the new solution. But in exponential futures, the 10x kind of mindset is basically means that it's never about slightly improved. It's not about marginal improvements. It's really changing the mindset radically. And the idea is like the question is, how do we radically change the game, the rules of the game, the potential outputs? And that's shorthand for the 10x mindset.
Thank you very much, Alon. So Exponential Futures 5.0, providing the context so that we are leveled in terms of the perspective. So the focus of this part of the session is based on the intersection of digital transformation and the responsible transition. And this is the work that I'm very passionate about. Also, it's the continuation of my postdoc work after my graduation at the school. And this is how I managed to bring everything into one picture to explain the work that I've been doing and also the potentials, challenges, and opportunities that are on the way. So as Alon mentioned, Industry 5.0 is very limiting in terms of just the name as compared to what we use it for and how we refer to it. So that's why EF 5.0, Exponential Futures 5.0, is where technology and the responsible transition meet. So the responsible transition, of course, includes SDGs, ESG, creation of shared value, inclusion, diversity, equity, and all the rest. So it's everything about the responsible pillars. And then, of course, on technology side, we have all technologies such as blockchain, AI, robotics, quantum, and many more. So the point is, these technologies diverge in different directions. Like AI, if we take it as an example, since it's also the hot topic, if you look into the trajectory of the evolution of the AI technology, you will see that it has diverged into many different industries, many different markets. In operational and business models, we can easily think about the use of AI in operational and supply chain and value chains. And of course, in our solutions and infrastructures, talking about smart infrastructures, everything about smart cities, smart manufacturing, and smart grids, and many more. So these also reflect the meta clusters that we previously discussed in the Exponential Futures 5.0. But the point is that these technologies diverge and then they converge with these different spheres like markets and industry, operational and business model, solutions and infrastructure. And then what emerges there is a new form of value, values and value system, the new definition of value. What do we mean by value now moving forward? Understanding that in the context of the desirable emerging futures, we must keep the elements of the responsible transition to make sure that not only we are sustainable, but we are restorative in our practices and also we are regenerative in our practices and governance models. Of course, circular economy is also a strong element of the responsible transition. So this is how the divergence of technologies and combinatorial innovations with markets and industries, operational and business models, and solutions and infrastructures give rise to new value systems. And then in the next slide, we can see what does it change when we are thinking about moving from linear thinking to the exponential mindset. The thing is that we are used to thinking, in the way, in terms of growth, in a very linear way. We are used to that in terms of our industrial revolutions and also the way that the classic business models have been working. But we also are seeing and have been seeing the outliers, and those outliers, they have the exponential mindset. So the exponential mindset is exactly about those emergence, convergence, divergence that happens at the intersection of technology innovation. And then the 5.0 element reflects the intersection of responsible technology. So when this happens, necessarily we need to rethink about how we create value in organizations, in nations, at any scale from micro to macro and meta. We have to understand the ways that we create value. We capture those values. So, there are many values that can be created, but they are not well captured efficiently. And then, of course, distribution models that reflect the responsibility and ethics and accountability as well in what we talk about. Now, back to you, Alon, to give it more context on business model innovation.
All right. Well, as an easy segue from Saman's last slide, basically the way we define a business model today is basically how companies create, deliver, and capture value. So today, business model innovation as a design lever is basically thinking about how can we design new ways of doing that. And I talked about the 10x mindset. And so going beyond the industrial era linear thinking approach, where we try just to design in improvements, efficiencies, profitability. We try to keep costs the same while increasing profits, or we try to reduce costs while increasing the. It's all kind of a game of marginal gains. And here, when we're talking about business model innovation, we're trying to really think about how can we change the underlying structure of how a business operates. And some of the technologies and when we talk about the convergence and the emergence of these new technologies, new value systems, is how can we use these elements to design new business models that weren't around before, or how we can use these new elements to redesign existing business models. And so the business model innovation as an approach is trying to take into context this exponential futures approach and say, how can we overlay this on existing business models? And unfortunately, for existing businesses, it'll be even more interesting to take it from, basically a white sheet of paper and say, how can we design new businesses from scratch built on this new exponential context? And so basically, just to continue kind of the historic move and what is the business model innovation evolution. So, basically what we're talking about here is this move from uh, initially, and this is probably, the beginning of the 2000s. Uh, the whole idea was let's do business model innovation. Let's start digitalizing different parts of the business. Maybe we can eke out some operational gains. Can we do customer-centric design tweaks? Maybe at the time it was going to web first, and then now it's mobile first thinking. So these are kind of forms of business model innovation, but really kind of 3.0, 4.0 of just adding a digital layer to the existing business models. Today, with the exponential approach and the technology meets sustainability approach, so the 5.0 of exponential business modeling, it really is like, how can we take non-linear value drivers and design them and engineer them directly into the business model architecture and make it kind of native to digital and responsible context. So basically, now we're talking about re-architecturing business models in order to embed this digital and responsible context and create this 10x potential that we're talking about, which is what's basically going to unlock the exponential future side of things. Um, So here, like the main takeaway on that would be that we're not talking about incremental shifts. That was the 3 to 4 movement, was just the added digitalization. When we're going from 4 to 5, it's a major shift and it's an architectural shift. And so this is really reimagining the business model around exponential principles. Not a lot of people have their minds really wrapped around that yet. And that's what we're here today for, is maybe hopefully to help you get your mind also wrapped around the potential of what kind of rethinking architecture with these new exponential principles and technologies could do for your businesses or your institutions. Um, Basically here, and maybe we can ping pong on this, Saman, but just to show you kind of what the exponential mindset looks like. In the past, if we're talking about industrial era thinking, it was more about linear forecasting and trying to do kind of what we call single trajectory predictions. So how do we get 5% growth next year? And when we go to exponential, we start thinking portfolio. So the portfolio thinking is how can we manage multiple S curves and how can we manage multiple scenarios? And when you think of a company like Apple, how do you introduce the iPhone 17 while managing the S curve of the iPhone 16? How do you bake in services into a hardware model and things like that? So the idea here is really going from linear to something that's more exponential and going from single product to portfolio thinking.
Thank you, Alon. So from trade-off, we are moving into a logic that we understand that we cannot ignore the elements of the responsible transition. So the main difference of Industry 5.0 as the underlying foundation of 5.0 is that it has the element of the responsible transition in addition. Industry 1 to Industry 4.0, that in many places are still talking about Industry 4.0, is technically missing that capacity to integrate systemically across the board the impact. In other words, as we have seen, Industry 4.0 and the previous one, they are linear in their design, they are extractive, they extract value from the society and the environment in order to create financial value for shareholders. In 5.0, this conversation is completely different. We talk about stakeholder value creation. And also, we understand that we cannot have a tech-driven mindset. Technology must empower. Technology as a tool enhances us, but then the mindset must be the intersection of the responsible transition and the digital transformation. And this is what we are also seeing when we are looking into the convergence, divergence, and emergence patterns. We see the increasing support and pressure from the stakeholders. Look at it from policy and regulatory angle, with all the directives and all the strategy initiatives and policy frameworks, up to the partners that you have in business that increasingly they are required to ask you about your social and environmental footprint. So this is creating a sort of a flow that is moving from trade-off to the convergence of values with innovation, with financial benefits based on socio-environmental prosperity.
And so the idea here is that, we talk about business modeling. When we have this linear industrial mindset, we kind of keep trying to optimize the existing business model over time. So small adjustments to improve the business model. What we're moving towards is a really dynamic value creation system. And so even thinking about the company, the institution, the organization as a dynamic system with elements that are internal to the company, external to the company. We talk about institutional dynamics, exstitutional dynamics. And so all of a sudden you see the business model more as an ecosystem that evolves and adapts and creates value in new and unique ways. And so this is also part of this exponential mindset. One of the principles is trying to add assets that you don't control as part of your own business model. And so this dynamic system approach is again very different. It requires a different mindset, different forms of creativity, new forms of cooperation and collaboration. And that's also something we haven't spoken about too much, but this emergence of the exponential futures requires a new mindset in cooperation and collaboration as well, which is quite interesting. And here again, you can see how impact and tech amplify each other and push us and nudge us in interesting ways towards increasing forms of collaboration.
We are moving from control to orchestration technically means that the classic ways of looking at management, hierarchical management, and direct ownership is now being changed and challenged. Now we are really more into the logic of stewardship, and exponential is in contrast with classic control models by definition. For that, we have also a lot of technologies that are facilitating these type of exponential growth, of course, such as the blockchain and tokenized sort of business modeling, tokenized innovation and incentive systems, and onboarding the stakeholders. And the orchestration is really referring to the part that we have to understand as individuals and as institutions, the role that we play in the ecosystems that we are engaging with, in the sense that it's not only about my partners, but also I have to have a valid value proposition for the partners of my partners so that my partners can stay my partners too. So in that sense, it's an ecosystemic orchestration, also from the perspective of integrating the society, environment, and the economy in a meaningful way. So it's beyond Industry 5.0. We are including, of course, expanding across Society 5.0, Governance 5.0, and here for the context, Exponential Mindset 5.0.
All right. So a little bit specific to, we talked about the mindset. Now, what about the toolkit? So one of the ways to explain the mindset is to show you the actual different elements of what is XBMI and how do you put everything together. So I think the easiest one and that everybody gets intuitively is the digitize and dematerialize. So basically moving from atoms to bits. So moving from the physical world to the digital world. And that's kind of often still for many companies, many institutions. This is already something that still could help radically change their existing business model. Another one is the whole network and platform approach. And so here's kind of what Saman referred to, the orchestration side of things, is when you think about networks and platforms, you're no longer about control, you're about facilitating access, you're about allowing other players in your ecosystem to create value. And so you're enabling multi-sided value creation, and you don't control the value, you just let it emerge. The next aspect, and this is something I think that, AI is just one of them. It's a subset, but the idea of learning in data flywheels. How can you create self-reinforcing loops on information that allows you, the more information you have, the better your services can get. An easy example would be Amazon. The more you purchase on Amazon, the easier it is for Amazon to suggest new products or services for you because it knows what you like and what you've purchased in the past. But most businesses have much more information than they can imagine. And if they find a way to create these feedback loops, they can unlock part of this XBMI kind of approach. Another aspect is this ecosystem orchestration. How do you coordinate assets that you don't own? And here again, when you think about Uber, Uber doesn't own the cars that you're being driven in, Very good example of ecosystem orchestration. Airbnb does not own the apartments or the homes that you're renting out, but it is very good at coordinating these assets. And so it creates enormous value for itself, for its stakeholders, but also for us as the consumers, even though they don't own any of the assets that we are enjoying. Another one is the impact and circularity. I think today everybody understands that this should become a bigger and bigger part of what business models are. The thing is this, and Saman and I are very similar in this, is that most companies today still think that impact and circularity is a nice to have, and it's not a need to have. And the design for regenerative growth is something you do if you're already making a lot of money or if it's something that you're adding on as an afterthought. But the exponential futures approach is saying that impact is amplified by technology and technology amplifies impact if they're integrated from the get-go. And so this is kind of the fifth element of XBMI. And I would say that the winners in designing impact and circularity into their business models will be the winners in the market. Those will be the companies that go far and for a long time. So basically, that's the idea. This is kind of the toolkit for designing exponential business models. Each one can work independently. Obviously, it's much better and much stronger if you can use them in combination. And the idea is that you can create multiple pathways to nonlinear value creation. And again, when we see today's most successful companies, in general, they're using at least three of these principles in some kind of form, and sometimes all five. So, exponential business model, what is it? It's at heart, basically, the core idea is that we use key value drivers that scale non-linearly. So this is important. Again, the mind doesn't think exponentially, and that's what we're saying here is, for example, you can increase sales at times 10 every year without the costs increasing in an equivalent manner. Most of the time, industrial era thinking is if you wanted to increase sales by 10%, you have to increase marketing by 20%. And here the idea, no, is you can generate extreme growth without reinvesting equivalent in capital expenditures, in marketing, in people, whatever it may be, just because you've designed exponentiality into your business model. What is the power? What are the power sources here? So it's basically once you move to a digital asset approach, once you've applied the digitization, now you can replicate a lot of those infinitely. You can start using and leveraging network effects. Effects basically mean the more people that use your service, the more value you provide for your users. The more value, the more users, the more data you have about your users, which means that you can improve the service and the experience for your users. And then you can move to this ecosystem approach that allows you to extend the capabilities, expand what you can offer your users, even though you don't necessarily own the assets. And so you build in extreme customer satisfaction on improving customer experience and growing exponentially while keeping costs at bay. And the last aspect, but probably the most difficult, but the most important, is you have to build this into the infrastructure, meaning rethink the architecture. So traditional business models, basically, basically I said earlier, proportional investment in order to generate growth. Here, basically, you build in growth into the business architecture itself. So if you think about companies like Dropbox, and when they initially got started, each, thanks to building in virality, each user brought in 10 more users. And today, this is a big aspect of exponential business models is how can you build in virality into the actual architecture of the business model itself. We talked about Amazon, and we'll talk about other examples going forward, but the idea is that the growth is in the architecture. It's not wishful thinking that happens by chance. It happens by design. So quick question, and just to see where are you today, and to see if you've been following. So first of all, in terms of linear thinking, I'll let each one of you who is following today answer this question for themselves. Where are we, or where am I, still fundamentally linear in our business model? Which parts of our value creation require proportional resource scaling? As I said before, that would mean more sales means more marketing. All right. Where do physical constraints or kind of sequential processes limit our growth potential? Okay, so again, like, is it because you're not digitized and you have a limited amount of physical infrastructure and that's what's holding you back? So in that case, where could we apply some of the XBMI 5.0 principles? So that would be one area that you might want to think about. Another area is the hidden potential. So where could you use this kind of network effects? Where could you use the feedback or data loops? Or where could you kind of think about creating ecosystems or communities? Where could they emerge? But currently, they're not really part of your business model. All right. So the question is here is like what latent connections, like what connections are maybe implicit but not explicit between users or stakeholders that today remain unexploited. You know, if you think about it today, like the easiest example, I'm pretty sure all of us have a relationship with a bank, and you know that they know a lot about you, and you wonder, why can't they give me better service and better suggestions for services than what they do? Probably because they don't have the data loops in place. So for your own companies, your own institutions, what data could you use to create these learning loops? And what would happen if you're able to capture and apply those data loops? All right, so that's the hidden potential question. And the last one is what we call orchestration opportunities. So we talked about orchestration a bit with Saman as well. Who could we orchestrate in terms of partners or stakeholders uh, to be part of our value system, but without us owning those assets ourselves? So who could we orchestrate? Again, I gave you the example of Uber cars, which are not owned by Uber, Airbnb apartments, which are not owned by Airbnb. What capabilities do others possess that we're currently trying to build internally? Where could platforms, so a platform approach or a marketplace approach or a network approach, where could platforms replace pipelines? So instead of having product pipelines, where could we use platforms instead? So that's the orchestration opportunity question. All right. Um, should we go to questions? I don't know, Saman, if
Yeah,
you.
yes, sure, please. Let's we have one question here. Also, don't hesitate. Those who are joining directly on LinkedIn, you can drop your questions there. And those who are on the Zoom link, you can also ask questions here. For the exponential growth embedded in XBMI 5.0, how much of the growth would you say comes from new and more customers, and how much comes from increased business with each customer? Very good question.
Uh, okay, so excellent question. It's a tough one to answer in general. Um, I mean, it's definitely a combination of both. The thing is that when you apply XBMI principles, usually the more users you have, the more users you attract. So there's kind of a snowball impact. But also, the better your service and customer experience for each customer, they also seem what we call to be stickier and spend more with you. Um, Again, I gave you the example earlier of Amazon. But so let's say most people use Amazon, and some people use Amazon Prime. And so part of what Amazon has realized is that getting new customers is one way of generating growth. Another one is getting existing customers to become Amazon Prime subscribers as well. And then they do their best, and you see this really, it's quite an outlier in business, but they keep trying to increase the value of the Amazon Prime subscription. And that definitely boosts the average amount that each Amazon Prime subscriber spends with Amazon. So new customers come in, and that obviously boosts Amazon's top line. Existing customers move to Amazon Prime subscriptions. And so that has a small impact on revenue. But the biggest uptick comes from those Amazon Prime subscribers who then on average spend much more than a regular Amazon customer on Amazon, and it kind of builds in the customer loyalty because you're getting free deliveries and next day service in a lot of situations. And so it's definitely a combination of both. The other thing is if looking at the XBMI principles, a lot of industrial age customers, businesses and business models were very limited in how many customers they could onboard with the old model. When you move to digitization and dematerialization, there's almost no limits to how many customers you can serve. And so even that kind of potential pie of potential customers goes up quite significantly. Onboarding helps happens earlier, registration happens quicker, and the whole machine can get moving much faster than in the kind of linear industrial world.
Thank you very much, Alon. So maybe, yeah, let's go to the next slide and have participants think a bit.
All right. So let's see, besides the examples we gave, which would be cheating, where do you see XBMI happening today in the business world? That will be question number one. The idea is, where do you see XBMI in action? And if you can, also comment with what principles of XBMI do you see them applying? Again, the toolkit, we talked about the 5 different aspects from digitalized and dematerialized to impact and circularity.
Thank you, Alon. Maybe the next one.
All right. And the second question will be yep. All right.
Yes,
Go ahead.
no, please,
Yeah.
no. Okay, so the question is, how can you apply XBMI 5.0 for creating shared value with your stakeholders and beyond? As Alon also shared in the examples, the idea is to, first of all, understand that business modeling is the lever for creating, for capturing, and for redistributing value. However, thinking in an ecosystemic approach, we understand that it impacts our strategy, our competitiveness. Having the exponential mindset, understanding digitization and dematerialization of our assets, it impacts our strategies and our competitiveness. The network and platform, value creation across platform, it changes the way in which we engage with the stakeholders and again, generate shared value. The data flows, the data loops in the same way. The data loops now with technologies that we have today, such as digital twins, IoT, and cyber physical systems and sensors, and all these different type of points that allow us to interconnect our physical and even biological realms with the digital world gives us the three-dimensional sort of approach to these feedback and feed-forward loops. The idea is how can you in your business, or how can we in general leverage these technologies responsibly in order to create shared value? Ecosystemic orchestration, assets that we don't own. So in a decentralized and tokenized innovation models, this is very well captured that how are we incentivizing our stakeholders, our partners, our clients, the citizens, different actors of public and private sector to join, to engage with what we are designing, what we are doing. If it's the business, if it's the public sector, whatever it is. And of course, impact and circularity, again, it's like about understanding instead of being extractive, how can we be regenerative? How can that value creation be regenerative in the sense that we can have a collective growth? How can these technologies, how can AI and robotics now help us with a more circular approach to, for example, manufacturing? In health tech, how the integration of AI and robotics can help us with a more human-centric approach to treatment, personalized medication, nanobiorobotics, and many other interesting ways, which allow us to really think exponentially and technically do much more with less for longer, as we say. But here it's exponentially in the sense that that shared value that is created across disciplines, sectors, cultures, and dimensions, those can really drive exponential growth for business. So this is a question for all of you to think about, comment for us here, or if you have any questions now, if you're on the live session, we'll be happy to answer. If not, we would always be happy to have you for the follow-up sessions that we have with Alon on this very topic. So let me double check to make sure that we answered all the questions. Maybe, Alon, we can, I have one question about, can you elaborate on the example of Apple? If I guess we have time, we can quickly check for that, yes? And also we have a hand on, but if you don't mind for this part of the session, please text your questions. But for the course part of the session, for those who are a part of the specialization track at Retech Center of École des Ponts Business School, we will have more engaging conversations.
All right, so I'll try to keep it short. We only have a couple of minutes, but basically the idea with Apple, the iPhone is an interesting kind of mixed approach to XBMI. If you think of the iPhone as hardware, then you're like, what are you talking about? That's not XBMI. But if you think about everything that has been dematerialized and digitized that went into the iPhone, so if you think about a GPS, a camera, a compass, a calculator, all physical objects that existed separately and got dematerialized and put into the iPhone. So already there you understand, okay, so that's already one aspect. Then, when you think about the services today, so we talked about kind of the community and orchestration of assets that you don't own. So think about the developers developing apps for the iPhone that they don't work, they're not paid by Apple. They develop apps and services for the iPhone, even though they're not employees of Apple. They do it because they make money through those apps on the marketplace that Apple created. So it's another example of community, the developers, and a marketplace, the App Store, another principle of XBMI going into there. What's interesting is the data and feedback loops. So because of Apple's approach to privacy, they've actually hampered their approach to data and feedback loops because they keep it local on your phone. So they they actually can't aggregate as much data, but they still use it in order to improve the relevance of what they share with you, of what they propose, of what Siri would answer you with, etc. And then the last part, the interesting part that was probably missing in the Apple model was the impact and circularity. But today they have the Daisy robot that kind of disassembles iPhones in 1 second, increasing recyclability. They're increasing repairability. And so what seemed like there was a trade-off between technology and sustainability before is now increasingly part of Apple's business model. You can trade in your iPhone, and so they will take it back and they'll disassemble it, recycle it, and create the next new iPhone with your old iPhone. And so that's increasingly becoming part of the model. So it's not a clean XBMI, the iPhone and the ecosystem, but there are a lot of elements in XBMI in the whole Apple ecosystem, which is interesting to think about.
Thank you, Alon. Well, on the other side of the same coin, speaking of telephones, for example, we have the Fairphone. As Alon, you
Yeah.
mentioned that it's not completely XBMI. Fairphone brand is also the other one that is disrupting this market by moving from the responsible transition side rather than the orchestration of the ecosystems and creating those type of ecosystems. So Fairphone brand, for those who don't know, it's the brand that started with phones. Today they have computers as well. And the whole idea is what we discuss in circular economy context mostly is like design for disassembly, but also design for improvement, for changes, design for the reasons for which you wouldn't now need to change your phone. For example, most of us mostly change our iPhones because there is a better camera coming up or more memory or faster processor. But what happens in Fairphone and other similars that are coming up, those allow you to have a modular approach to design by design so that you can then create that sort of disruption in the market and move up. So on this side also, what is missing still is the ecosystems that engages the community more strongly together. We have a couple of questions, Alon, a couple of comments, and very interesting thoughts as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
I
want to take
see.
one? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing there's several. I don't know if we do it in reverse order.
Or check and maybe we can integrate them all in.
If you look at the Microsoft, da, 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 um, so there's one question about Microsoft here saying the early days, it was a lot about developers, so we could talk about orchestration of ecosystems. And the question is, today it seems like most ecosystem services are just services, as in consultancy. Are both of these BMI 5.0, would you say? So here, just in terms of Microsoft, what's interesting is that Microsoft used to be about selling us CD-ROMs with Office and Windows. And today it is completely dematerialized and digitized the entire ecosystem. And where it really started to create value for itself and for shareholders was it when it moved to the Azure cloud approach. And the cloud computing actually is an enormous enabler, something that Saman likes to talk about, the enabler and disruptor. So it disrupted a lot of on-premise computing, but also enabled an unlock of giving companies around the world access to, top level computing resources for a relatively accessible price. So again, Amazon did that with Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft Cloud, but this is another very good example of XBMI, the companies themselves using it for their own business model, but also making that part of many other companies' business models. So it's a good example of a disruptor becoming an enabler, which allows the emergence of many other businesses, and then a convergence of everybody today basically using cloud computing as their model of choice.
Thank you, Alon. Just on the 5.0 element, just remember that you can use the 5.0 element if you're integrating the responsible transition into the picture. If not, you can still have exponential innovation, exponential business modeling. But if it's not responsible, if it's not embedded, responsibility is not embedded by design, then you are risking what happens in the market in terms of the exponential futures because as we discussed, and as you can also think just in your own context, how this pressure and support from policy and regulation from your partners, clients, users, from your stakeholders for pushing for more responsibility in the sense of that can be accountability, traceability, transparency, inclusion, impact. So these are coming up and these responsible elements must be embedded in the design of your business models. So if you're not in that mindset yet, then it would be tough to keep your competitiveness and your positioning in the market, in the markets that are coming up. Because we know for a fact that digital transformation is accelerating exponentially itself. And we know for a fact that we cannot ignore the responsible transition, not just because we want to be, good people and, no, we have to strategically, we have to, of course, humanly, ethically, we have to as well. But no, here we're talking about pure business decisions. If you don't do it, you're risking. You're risking of for obsolescence of your strategies and initiatives. So, Alon, you're coming up from the bottom, I see.
Yeah, I see also Joao asked a question for us, I guess, how is XBMI being applied in education?
Yeah.
There's a lot of elements here.
Can I give one good example?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So what is our take on this is that our take is exactly what we are doing at Retech Center. So this is ecosystemic orchestration, what we do at Retech Center, starting from our executive DBA graduates and those who are finishing. So they are joining our community as fellows, and our EMBA graduates, they join as mentors, and then we generate shared value internally and also externally with the broader public. The work that we do, for example, with Women in Tech, which is a fantastic group of leading women from across industries. The network has more than 300,000 women around the world. And we have the pleasure of having the founder and CEO as a part of our executive DBA program. She's halfway. And, I brought her technically to the school exactly because this was what we were doing at Retech Center, creating this type of exponential mindset and exponential innovation. So here it's academic innovation at the heart, but then in terms of impact, it really goes beyond. And that's how at Retech Center now we have more than 32 specialization tracks that we are advancing with fellows, professors, and experts. More than 200 experts and professors are engaged to deliver this type of shared value to drive the responsible transition. And of course, a lot of focus on the technology part as an enabler.
Yeah, and maybe just to continue, Joao, for that is, the digitization and dematerialization of educational content has been an ongoing process for the last at least 10 years. The whole MOOC movement is a big part of that. Ecosystem orchestration is also a big part of what we do. We invite professors from top schools around the world, so they're not our professors, quote unquote, but they're definitely our professors as they teach in our programs. So that's another form of ecosystem orchestration. We also use content from, let's say, Harvard Business School Publishing. It's not content that we own, but we use and repurpose. And so if you look across this, basically all aspects of education are being impacted by XBMI. Today, this actual webinar is coming to you digitally. And so we have no constraints on physical distribution. It'll be recorded. It'll be available asynchronously. Some of the schools you mentioned, Alpha School 42, École 42, the 42 school in France, but again, those are mostly physical schools with physical constraints. So even if they're new approaches to education, they're not necessarily XBMI in action. And so there's obviously a lot of interesting approaches in education, but not all are necessarily XBMI. At the school, we try to apply a lot of the XBMI approaches as well. We try to practice what we preach. And obviously, there's always room to do more, but that's part of the idea. And that's part of Retech is the 10x mindset of saying we can get 10x more reach around the globe with what we do, thanks to the Retech approach. So that's also something we're trying to put in place. How much time more do we have to answer questions? You want
Well,
to?
let's see. We have a couple of comments if you want to also read and share them. These are interesting, some examples that participants have shared. I'll check for the questions.
Well, I can see Raja is saying that so she's giving examples, I guess, to the two questions we asked. So in governments,
Yes.
digitizing services around life events, not departments, a very good example. We know, for example, Kazakhstan has been, mothers can pre-register, and basically once their child is born, they get an SMS from the government asking for the name, the time of birth, of the child, and that child is immediately and automatically registered in the Kazakhstan Registry of Birth. So, there's a lot of incredible XBMI in action in e-government, and Kazakhstan is trying to push that. We all know Estonia is one of the forerunners in that, and that's exactly organization around life events rather than departments. Um, and again, some of the examples you give here, Roger, for companies shifting from product-based models to service and outcome-based models. So that can either be how they're being paid on pay-per-use. The whole SaaS, software as a service approach, is another one, going from a product, I sell you the software, to you use the software on an ongoing basis and you pay for a license or you pay per use. And you're saying in organizations using AI and data to anticipate needs. So the whole predictive versus reactive is definitely something that we're seeing today and will be increasingly seeing with kind of the ongoing AI revolution. Um, let's see, in Q2, XBNI leverage where economic value, social value, and human value interact and intersect. It is especially powerful in public sector innovation, inclusive digital transformation, and responsible AI adoption, where value is co-created with stakeholders, not delivered to them. So here again, I think this is another part of what we're talking about with the exponential futures and XBMI, where they meet is really at the human in the loop on all of this. And public sector innovation is, I think, an interesting area to look. It's actually interesting. Public sector innovation, video game business models, Chinese business models. There's a lot of different areas where you can see XBMI kind of forefront in leadership and creativity. And so today I'd say public sector innovation. Interesting enough, because most people don't think of that as a source of rapid innovation, but it is one of the areas that is really interesting to keep an eye on. Saman, did you want to say anything before we log off? Because I think we have 1 minute left.
Yes, well, thank you very much. We'll discuss these points also in the following session. So those who are joining on LinkedIn or watching the recording, but you are not a part of this specialization track yet, you're invited to join us, follow École de Pont Business School, and also follow Retech Center. We have a registration link on the page of Retech Center so that you receive the updates and invitations to join our specialization tracks. If you're interested in this particular topic, Alon and I are going to have more of these sessions that we deliver as executive specialized certification courses. that you can do them individually, separately, or also you can link them to your executive MBA and executive DBA. You're more than welcome to join us. Thank you very much up to here, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Alon, it was fantastic. We continue on the course session. We just take 15 minutes of break and join you there. Alon, thank you very much. It was fantastic so far.
Hey, thanks, Saman. See you soon.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.